I think is
okay, we can see your screen now.
Can you see it now? Yes.
Yes.
Here we have. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, and good afternoon to everybody. Thank you also to the Cosmos Consortium for the invitation to this meeting. I'm going to not do very long this speech, but anyway, I will focus in my speech on several issues around museum and community. Especially, I would like to make a special mention to one model that of conceiving an organizing school named Learning Community. That model is a very interesting one, thinking about a school as a community and indeed thinking about museum also as a community. If we think in museum education, that means also heritage education, mainly in a community context. Heritage education is a relatively recent field of study, but in practice is presented in form of educational projects. At the end, I will name some ideas for these educational projects designed in a context of teacher training. So the actual panorama of education in European Union conveys important changes that have been developed in the recent decade, but with a special emphasis today. The main one has to do with European education area, built on several pillars, for example, the conception of lifelong learning and the acquirement of key competences. Also the recommendation that we have on promote social cohesion. This is related with the United Nations goals for 2030, or the idea of promoting common values, inclusive education, and even the European dimension of teaching. The achievement of that European education area has been a new impulse in this year, in 2022. We have a very recent communication from the European Commission, almost a month ago, due also to the situation of the pandemic we have today by COVID-19, that has placed to all the educative system in an adaptation position that had to be faced from one day to another to the other, with the special personal implication of all the teachers. In that document, the Commission proposed that the European education area is underpinned by 6 dimensions. That dimension, this is the graphic view of that dimension. That those are quality, in the first quality, inclusion and gender equality, green and digital transmission, teacher, higher education, and a stronger Europe in the world. The first one is quality. It has to do with basic and this digital skill, that also with key competences, a dynamic combination of knowledge, skill and aptitude. The second one is inclusion and gender, to make school education more inclusive in gender, more sensitive, in gender sensitive. That means working with the equity as a basic for education. And the third one is to make a stronger understanding of climate change and sustainability. It has to do with the current digital life, where we are bound to life, as Luis told in the previous in the previous speech. So, how is European Union working to deliver a European education area, that the construction of that European education area? We have some recent document. We have the recommendation of key competences and common values. That this recommendation is from 2 years ago, very recent. We had also now the recommendation on digital education, or not exactly a recommendation, but the digital education action plan. It's a plan that is have been launched this year. Is for 2021, 2027. So the line will be in 27. So for 2025, we will have to manage a special emphasis in cultural heritage and in diversity. Teacher training is other crucial dimension of education, conceived as at the heart of education. We have here some ideas. This idea of that the teacher training is the heart of education, but only it's clear that a million of teachers across Europe have to adapt rapidly to the school closure by the pandemic, and we in general have remained on the front line to respond to be ensured that learning continues. Also, it is clear that without teachers, there is no innovation, no inclusion, no transformational education experience for the learners. Also, the idea of that the teaching profession needs to be revalorized, and also the idea that the teachers need continuous opportunity for professional development, mainly in their competence for teaching with students with special needs, the use of digital technologies, and teaching in multilingual and multicultural classroom. That is diversity. So it has changed specifically the way we relate to culture. We speak of a knowledge society as an evolution of information society. The information society, when the use of computer and the media become common, networks such as internet, with information increasingly based on images and audiovisual, multimedia, e-protest, has given way to society of knowledge, by the importance that today has continuous training and knowledge management that is involved a renewable knowledge, conversation of knowledge into applied knowledge. And we have the lifelong learning framework. This is a framework related with the digital world. And the constant learning, the fluency of knowledge. Nothing is as we had been told. Everything is changing. The knowledge is fluid. So then arise the diversity of culture and the need to inclusion, the idea of equality that we talked about. And the concept of heritage education is based also in the idea we could have of cultural heritage. So that concept have been released in the last decade. And heritage usually had historicist connotations, and it's centered on objects, we think of objects that must be preserved, that this evolution allows us to talk about heritage with a vision focused on people, individuals, and groups or communities. Also consider the procedural character of heritage, and we usually think, traditionally, we have thought of landmarks or only monuments. Heritage has then a changing and evolving character, taking into account the active and creative aspect related with heritage. The value of the cultural heritage is conferred by the individuals and even the groups, so communities. This is how identity is formed. So 2 years ago, we have the Year of Heritage, the European Year of Heritage, and this celebration made possible that today we have an European framework for action on cultural heritage. This framework is based in 5 areas of action, 5 pillars. The first one is very important, in this case, participation and access for all the people. So this has to do with engaging the wider public, including via digital, that it's that Luis said in his speech. Engaging also school children, that's formal education, so non-formal, formal education, and also breaking barriers to access, so for all the people. So that 3 areas that are related. So the basis of that idea is the relative placement of education in 5 approach of multicultural education from power, knowledge, relationships. In this order, we have in one hat, the teaching, the idea of teaching culturally different, then the teaching human relations, then the single group studies, the idea of cultural democracy that we have today in related with heritage education, and also in the other side, the social reconstruction. So heritage is a way of creation of meaning, that is creation of identity. It's a new conception of culture that is defined by people, the people way of perceiving, believing, evaluating, and behaving, affected by environment, the economic system, and even the mode of production. And culture is learned by inculturation or socialization, that is formalized instruction, formal education, and also shared by the most of its members, is adaptive, dynamic, is seen as a transitional process made through alliances and negotiations. We think in culture as a diversity of cultures. For example, hive culture, hippie culture, adolescence, school culture, subculture. In how can we do that? How can we do that? We propose, or I propose, a model based on experience, that is the experience in in the visit that the museum as a place, as a context for develop the heritage education. This is a special moment that with this idea convenes to think in cultural heritage and a changing and fluid reality of intellectual resources to be experienced and used with different valid purpose. To accept that different meaning created by the audience in that experience within the heritage from the identity, needs, and interest. In one hand, we have the transdisciplinarity and the transculturality, and in the other hand, with heritage education, and in the other hand, the particular cultural identity and meaning related with object and related with the things. From a pedagogical point of view, we use dialogical pedagogy when reception and production even are simultaneous. Another idea that I wanted to bring here is the idea of learning community as a model of conceiving and organizing the school. Learning community is, we can define it as a project of social and cultural conversion of a school and environment for a society of knowledge for all the people, based on dialogical learning, dialogical pedagogy, and participatory education of the community, with using all the space, including the classroom, the space of the classroom, and all the space around the school. This idea of learning community that is used in educational context is an idea that look at the formal, but even to the non-formal education, the real and even the virtual life, virtual things. Can look at the economic and human development, but also the citizenship and social participation that is anchored in the rural, but also the urban. And that idea, the learning community, has to do with community, indeed, but also with learning and culture for a full citizenship. And this key concept related with learning community, that is formal, non-formal, informal education, and the all people approach for all people, school and community. There are concepts that we review that content, and even we go beyond them, no? Educational policy, social policy, but even economical, all together. Education and culture, expert knowledge, but also common and popular knowledge. Innovation as a chain down to up, as opposite to reform that is a chain up to down. And even look at the global and the local at the same time. The traditional things, the traditional one, and the latest technology, so in CM. And the school as an institution and even non-institution as part of community for development, but also the museum as an institution, non-institution, should be part of that community. Because the idea that the museum can be a learning community, or should be a learning community, but the museum also can be part of the learning community related with a school. For illustrate that, here we have that figure that is that work of art made by Luis Camtizer. Museum is a school that is intervention that he made in some museum around the world. Okay. In the Committee for Education and Cultural Action, we are in the committee of the ICON. We have some development that may be useful. We have a program that is the best practice program. It has been developed a tool for evaluation. It's a very comprehensive one, a very in-depth one. Here we have the first part of that evaluation. This is accessible by the web, SECA web. And because heritage education, at the end, the form of heritage education is in program, in project. Also in the committee, Committee for Education and Cultural Action, we have, or we can find all the best practice project published is available also. There are very interesting tool for working in project. And here we have some example. For finish, I want to show you some example that we have developed in two programs, mainly in the sorry, because it's in Spanish, but it's the program for art, visual art and education, or the University of Granada, and also in the program that is a doctoral program, arts and education at the University of Granada. And the idea that is to work in a specific program for heritage education and museum education. Here we have some example. This is in Spanish, of course, but sorry. Territorios sin límite, no limits, no limit land. And here we have some fundamental key issues on objectives and aims related with that project. And even because those are projects that link the territory, the land, the territory with the museum and heritage education, in this case for children. And we have here another project that is invisible, not visible, that has to do with some several monuments and even heritage issues that disappear, in this case in Granada, that is our country. So it's a way of come back the heritage to the present, past, lost in the past to the present. And other project related, in this case, is intergenerational project. Children and grandfather and mothers. The objective of the aims are to know, to create a link, to reflect on all these things. And other project, this one, that is this one, Paseo por el Arte, this gincana, this something like a gincana in several museums in the city, with different activities, with cues. Well, it's very okay. And another project, this Ellas, el arte invisible, she, they, this invisible art, also an idea of working with women, but not women, the main women of the museum, but the keeper, that kind of women that you don't see them in the museum, and with also with talking about the different museum in Granada, and even this fine art school, and the Alhambra also. And at last, I have here another project that was developed in the museum Casa de los Tiros, the City Museum of Granada, Apunta, Dispara, Arte. That was the interesting of this project. It was related the museum with the neighborhood, with the people of the neighborhood. Also linked with the school that is in the quarter, okay? So at the end, I will finish with that. I wanted to finish with Gilles de la Varenne, that we was the last year in the museum, Archaeological Museum of Fundão. It was a very interesting meeting on community museum in Portugal. So this idea de la cultura viva, the living culture, the fluid knowledge that I said before. So thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I've been very fast, I think, but I don't wanted to have more time.
Lola, thank you very much. Has been